Biometric voting, biometric voting, biometric voting. Can we talk about biometric voting in the Bahamas? Welcome, and if you're just joining me, my name is Dr. Deidre Moss. I am an educator, a motivator, and a talk connoisseur. Today we'll be talking about biometric voting in the Bahamas. Before we begin, if you're tuning in from our social media page and you just joined us, like and share this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel using the links on our page. And if there's something that you think we should be talking about, feel free to let us know. We do want to hear from you. Let us know if you want to advertise on our platform or sponsor our program. And as a disclaimer, as I previously mentioned, my name is Dr. Deidre Moss, and I am an educator, a motivator, and a talk connoisseur. I have a background in marketing, journalism, and mass communication, and I view the world through these lenses. I focus on issues from a Caribbean regional perspective, but more specifically, the Bahamas, where I currently reside. I also discuss international issues and their impacts on our communities. I started this program several years ago to create meaningful content that educates, content that informs. And as a platform, we want to grow, so grow with us. And if you're in a position to support us or donate to our platform as we seek to grow into a studio space, please reach out to us using the contacts that are on our page. And with that, let's jump into our session. So, we're talking about biometric voting in the Bahamas. And recently, we're talking about this topic today because recently the PLP government have shared their plans to implement a biometric voting system for the upcoming 2026 election in the Bahamas. And if you're curious like me, you might be wondering how would all of this be possible with the upcoming elections rapidly approaching. And of course it's possible, but the 2020 to 2026 elections is rapidly approaching. So this is a kind of a lot to get done before that time. And since this is an important topic, our team found it necessary to further dissect this topic. So, our session today will explore the topic of biometric voting in the Bahamas. To further explore this topic, we should first get an understanding of the concept of biometric voting. And so, now for those individuals who may not have a complete understanding of the biometric voting process. Biometric voting refers to using biometric technology. So this includes using an individual's unique features as a form of authentication. This can include fingerprints or other identifiable markers. So the goal of biometric voting is to prevent multiple voter fraud. Okay, prevent a person from voting multiple times, either by either by voting multiple times or registering multiple times. So biometric voting can help to mitigate against these issues. So how biometric voting markers of the individual, such as their fingerprint, to authenticate the owner of the said voter's ID card. So, what are the facts? The Bahamian government announced plans to introduce biometric voting. The Parliamentary Department has announced their plans to launch the biometric voters card in the beginning of 2026. And so we are going to jump to that video. Okay, let's see what they have to say.
It is also important to note that we already have a head start. About 80% of Bahamians on the register have already submitted biometric data through the passport office. We propose allowing individuals to give their consent for the existing data to be securely transferred to the Parliamentary Registration Department. This saves time, cuts costs, and avoids forcing the public to go through the same process twice. For new applicants or those updating their card, biometric registration will involve submitting a high-resolution photo, digital fingerprint impressions, and a digital signature.
Okay, so that clip was made available by Eyewitness News. So we are sharing that video for educational purposes. So we are sharing that video for educational purposes. So I just want to reiterate that. So the minister responsible for the Parliamentary Registry Department and the Minister of National Security, Mr. the new Parliamentary Act that said that voters whose biometric data is already in the passport office will have the option to consent to their data being transferred. The Parliamentary Elections Amendment Bill 2025 will introduce changes to the voter registration process. And some of these changes will include the biometric voter ID card, the verification, the introduction of biometric data, and penalties and fines. And so we're going to jump to that video.
These amendments make provisions to formally adopt biometric based voter registration and verification and will introduce new biometric voter cards, e poll books at polling stations, periodic voter verification exercises, and enhanced data security protocols. They do so with the utmost transparency, supported by changes to primary legislation that this House will debate before the summer break, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with this step, we are following a well-trodden path. We are not reinventing the wheel.
So that is a clip from the Minister Wayne Monroe speaking about the move to the biometric voting system. So the Parliamentary Elections Amendment Bill 2025, where does this all come from? So the act makes a amendment of section 2 of the Principal Act, which makes room for the term voters card or biometric voters card. Where this insertion includes new definitions of biometric data and features including digitized fingerprints, digitized fingerprints, machine readable facial images. Okay, so I'm going to jump back to that again due to whatever technical difficulties that we may have had. I'm going to jump back to that statement again. So the Act makes an amendment to Section 2 of the Principal Act, which makes room for the term voters card or biometric voters card, where this insertion includes new definitions of biometric data and features including digitized fingerprints, machine readable facial images, and digital signatures. There are other notable amendments made to the Principal Act that Bahamians should also take note of. So the new Parliamentary Act makes room for the following. First, penalties that include up to $10,000 in fines for tampering with biometric systems. Additional penalties include making an offense for individuals who knowingly provide false information or make false representation during voter verification processing. Penalties includes fines or prison times. And the Act further states that this policy seeks to amend the Parliamentary Elections Act in an effort to modernize the electoral process in the Bahamas. So the biometric voters card will contain key features such as digitized fingerprints, facial images, and digital signatures. The biometric voters card will replace will replace the previous voters card system, and biometric voters card will only be valid for a period of 10 years. So now that we've discussed biometric voting and the new parliamentary amendment bill for 2025 and the plans that the current administration has to implement biometric voting in the Bahamas, there are several things that we need to consider and even questions that we should be asking ourselves. And here are some of those questions. Number one, why implement a biometric voting process so close to the upcoming elections? But let's jump to this video.
It is also important to note that we already have a head start. About 80% of Bahamians on the register have already submitted biometric data through the passport office. We propose allowing individuals to give their consent for the existing data to be securely transferred to the Parliamentary Registration Department. This saves time, cuts costs, and avoids forcing the public to go through the same process twice. For new applicants or those updating their card, biometric registration will involve submitting a high-resolution photo, digital fingerprint impressions, and a digital signature.
Okay, so we heard from the representative speaking about biometric voting. So, questions to ask ourselves: why implement a biometric voting process so soon and so close to the next election? I'll say that again. Why implement a biometric voting process so soon and so close to the next election? How will voters be prepared for this change? Have voters been given enough time to prepare for this change? And will information sessions, of course, they'll be available, but when will information sessions on biometric voting be made available for the voting public? So I also want to take a moment to pivot to what's in the news section segments. And at this time, I'm also going to check for any comments. If you have any comments, feel free to add to our video. We do want to hear from you. So I'm sharing this clipping from this article from the Tribune newspaper, and this article was published in the Tribune newspaper by Jade Russell, that says that the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Prime Minister Philip Brave Davis, wants the Bahamas to move toward making voter registration mandatory for Bahamian citizens. However, people would still be able to decide whether they wanted to vote or not. He made reference to the statement in the House of Assembly where he said that this would encourage greater civic engagement. What are your thoughts on this statement? And should voter registration be mandatory for all Bahamian citizens? Note that these videos that have been shared in the session are not our own, and they have only been shared for educational purposes. So I want to take a moment to move to our next segment, which is our motivational minute. And this brings us to our motivational minute. So, our motivational minute says a leader doesn't have time to respond to every critique made against them. Giving a response to every critique shifts their focus and distracts them from what should be doing, leading. Any individual, and I'll say that again. A leader doesn't have time to respond to every critique made against them. Giving a response to every critique shifts their focus and distracts them from what they should be doing, leading. Any individual in a leadership position should understand the role that they occupy. Leadership by far is not easy, and the responsibility of leading can be overwhelming. And for anyone in a leadership role, whether that might be in the workplace, at home, or in a group setting, you've probably already experienced the upside of leading and the downside as well. You might already be acquainted with the fact that there are going to be people who will not appreciate you, and there are going to be people who will appreciate you as well. But an attribute of a true leader is having the ability to accept that everyone will not receive you and keep it moving. You welcome the compliments as well as the criticisms. And if we're going to be honest with ourselves, we know that leadership is not for the weak or a weak minded individual. If so, anyone would be able to take on this role. Leaders lead, and a leader will not have the time to respond to every person who makes a comment about them or their leadership style. A leader won't have the time to take on every opposition. Of course, it might be tempting to respond to the critics, the jokes, the comments, or the jeers, but these can sometimes serve as distractions, and every critique does not need a response, and the truth doesn't need to defend itself against a lie. A leader just needs to continue to stay in position and do the thing that they were meant to do. That is lead. So this brings us to the end of our session. I want to thank you for tuning in and joining us today. We talked about biometric voting, which is something that the current administration intends to implement for our upcoming 2026 elections. And this is something that our voting public needs to be prepared for. And we know that this is a big enough issue to dissect and even further explore. So we want to remind you, as we close out this session, we want to remind you, if you want to advertise with us, let us know. You can also reach out to us through our page. Our contacts are there. We want to grow, so grow with us. To those watching via social media, thank you for listening in. Like our page for future notifications of upcoming talks. Comment under our videos. Let us know your thoughts and let us know what you want us to talk about. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel using the links on our page. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter using the addresses that are provided on our page. So, this brings us to the end of our session, and we close out by saying, let's think, talk, do. Good evening.